David Morgan from silver-investor.com. Thank you for joining us here on the Stellar Concepts YouTube channel.
John, it's great to be with you. I've privileged to be with you. I've watched a lot of your videos. In fact, the Silver War Cry, I'm sure you probably remember that, came to me via one of my subscribers, and I thought so much about it that I threw it up on my website for quite some time, actually. There's a call in the wilderness, I guess, as they say in the States here, about, screaming out to the forest and no one really hears you. Certainly a lot of people have heard me, and I'm sure I've heard you, but the silver story is still something that very few people have heard about.
Absolutely, and look, the pleasure's all mine. When I think of your name, I think Mr. Sensible. You're one of the few silver market commentators that can keep a cool, level-headed, sane view of the silver world when everyone else can tend to sort of get carried away with it. So tell me, how hard is it to stay calm when you see silver performing the way it has been?
Well, as most of my experience in life, it comes just from that experience. Had I not been such a rabid silver bull in my 20s and 30s and experienced the overreactions, you might say, on the way up and on the way down, I probably would not be, as you say, sensible, and I appreciate the comment very much, to hold in there as silver does these wild swings and has very much more volatility than gold does.
That leads us to the next question, obviously, is why aren't we getting the pullback at the moment we're so used to seeing?
Well, I've thought a great deal about this, as I'm sure everybody that listens to you and I are doing as well. Unfortunately, what I'm about to say is what I truly believe, or I wouldn't say it. I really believe we're entering into the beginning of the currency crisis that I and others have predicted for so long. The Bank of Japan basically says that they're taking their interest rates down to zero. Yep. They're going to print as much money as they have to. And what's going on in the United States, as you're probably aware, I'll just touch on it, is that this subprime mortgage derivatives problem has definitely gotten way out of hand. But on top of that, some of the courts in some of the states have said that they're invalid because the entities that are the banking system that's foreclosing on these people are required to show the original paperwork, and they can't produce it. And the court says if you can't produce it, then your foreclosure proceedings have to end. They're invalid. And so this news is spreading like wildfire, and what that really means is that the derivatives debacle, again, that I spread throughout my speaking circuit, being the number one cause that I thought would take the financial system down, is happening. And those that recognize that, there is no paper price that's too high for gold and silver. So it's very difficult, from my perspective, to say, where are we technically? That's easy. We're so overbought. We're more overbought technically in silver than we've been. There's only been like 3 other times since 1970 that it's been this overbought on a technical basis. So what? You have to look at the fundamentals, and I look at both, as you know. And the fundamentals are that we're starting to see an actual breakdown crisis within the financial system that not too many talk about. I said that kind of stuff in the year 2000, 2001, 2002, very early on. I wrote an article called Dollar.com, Takeoff on the Tech.com bubble. And I talked about Dollar.con and the con game that goes on with the dollar and what's the inevitable end result of this.
You certainly have been, and I can vouch for that. I mean, I've got a lot of your work, certainly a lot of your DVDs that you've put out over the last sort of few years. But, I think a lot of the people here on the channel also can see a currency crisis ahead. That's partly the reason why they're invested, if not the reason. How do you see a currency crisis ending? I mean, what has to happen before the international currency system can revert back to stability?
Well, that is really a great question, and geez, I wish I had a really great answer. There are several scenarios. Whatever I tell you, it'll probably come out differently. But in the past, you could see that the instability has to get so great that the powers that be, the governments of the world, if you will, the IMF, World Bank, have a crisis meeting, which is probably going to be taking place at the next one, and discuss how to do it. They really don't know. That's the truth of the matter. And so what they normally try is some kind of stabilizing method where they might tie it to commodity. I mean, that's the most obvious. Whether or not they do that or not remains to be seen. If you go back and look at, the hyperinflation during the Weimar Republic, when they went, basically the currency, for all intents and purposes, went to zero. When they came out with the new Rentenmark, it was not really any different than the previous paper currency, but it was accepted. I just did an interview with Franklin Sanders about this in this month's issue of the Morgan Report. And he said, and he's right, that it was done, that the people accepted it because they were so darn worn out. They were so sick of having to go to their employer and getting these wheelbarrows full of paper and shop before, they could, as fast as they could. They were just worn out. So they accepted this other paper promise that was redenominated as trustworthy, even though in actuality nothing had changed. Now, I'm not suggesting that either. But what I am saying is no one knows, and I don't know what they'll do. It's all confidence. So unless they go back to a currency that doesn't require confidence, which would be gold and silver, if they don't do that, and it's very unlikely they do, they need to instill trust and confidence. And that's pretty hard to do once you've lost it. So you try to tie it to, again, some type of commodity base, maybe energy, maybe food. It's hard to say, but it's...
Perhaps gold and silver.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, if they do that, even in a weak way, it would probably reinstill confidence, in the system. It could, but not necessarily. But John, personally, from all of my study, I think that we're not there yet. Now's the time to do it. I mean, the time to do it was years ago. The time to do it was go back on the gold standard. Anyway, I don't want to live in the past, but the point is, knowing how the political system works here, and now it's pretty much global, it's going to get worse before it gets better, in my view, unfortunately.
No, I tend to agree with that. And, a few months, even years ago, it used to be about, insofar as silver, the CFTC and position limits and all that sort of stuff. But now it seems, even with Andrew Maguire's testimony coming out in recent months, it just doesn't seem to matter anymore about what the CFTC does or what happens with speculation in these big bullion banks. It just doesn't matter anymore. It's the market is becoming bigger than that, and is becoming more important than these CFTC rulings. Would you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I was actually the one that introduced Jim Cook to Ted Butler. I found Butler early on, being the silver nut that I am. And I knew Jim, and I knew he was kind of a silver bull, and was very familiar with Jerome Smith, who was kind of the silver guru back when I was a youth. And so, I kind of made that happen, which I'm very glad. But Ted and I have a different viewpoint, and Ted's not here to, and I'm not berating him at all. I think a great deal of Ted. Ted has done more than anybody has done, by far more than me, to bring the truth of the light, you might say, onto what's going on with the commitment of traders and the CFTC and all that. And I give Ted full credit for that. Where we differ is our core belief system. My core belief system is that no government entity is going to solve the problem. I don't believe in top-down solutions anymore. I believe the government is so corrupt that that's basically a waste of time in a way. Now, I'm not saying don't do it, because Ted is fully behind it and he believes in it. Ted, in my view, and he, again, can't speak for himself, believes that if you get to the right entity, the right person, they will do the right thing. I don't believe that.
I think a lot of people on this channel will agree with that. It's certainly a comment I get, quite a bit. Moving on a little bit, I guess, to gold. The Huey, I don't know if you noticed that. You've probably been busy with gold. The Huey just broke out. I think it's a historic high. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but is this sort of at the level where stocks start to outperform the metals?
It could be. It's too early to tell. I hate to rely on my old maneuvering, you might say, but I like to see a couple more days trading, but certainly it could be. And I think it's too early, though. It could. I doubt it. What I really think is that we may be at a temporary top right in here. I've been saying that for a few days and been wrong. What normally happens is they test the breakout point and then fall back. I expect that could be the case. What I really expect for the area for the stocks to really outperform the metal is when the metal is so difficult to get. And we may be there right now, John, I don't know, because there are some deliveries that are still open in the September contract from what I can tell in the public domain information, but I can't prove it. Also, what the tightness that developed during the financial crisis of 2008. I mean, we all know that silver went down on paper to $9 the ounce, but the only place you could get it for $9 was off the exchange, and the retail dealers were selling it around $13.50. So there's a huge, there was a huge appetite to buy it at a low price. So people were flooding into the market and had to wait weeks to get, relatively small amounts of silver. It happened in the gold market as well, but not quite to the degree it happened in silver. So that tells us that one, how tight the supplies are, and two, that this paper mechanism is already on, having issues. We'll put it politely, that it's having issues. And going back to what we said a moment ago about the market taking off on its own regardless of the CFTC, one, you're exactly right, and two, we'd all, kind of forecast that would happen. That's why I didn't get real involved with some of these details, because I knew eventually the free market would win out, and it looks like it is right now. So eventually I think you'll see that in the stocks as well.
Well, that is where you come in. I mean, you post here on YouTube as Silver Guru. I'll put a link up to that channel, but tell people about what you do at silver-investor.com and how we can glean from your somewhat, 30 years experience?
The website is set up as a free and membership site. So first of all, before I forget, I'm offering all of your viewers for the next 30 days, and we're doing this I think on the 5th of October, so till the 5th of November, you can get free access to the members only portion of the website. So all you have to do to get that is to go to silver-investor.com/AU. But if you just want a good education on the silver market, money, mining, and metals is the subtitle of my report, the Morgan Report. I look at money, I look at mining, and I look at the metals. There's a lot of information in the archive, stuff I've written that we've talked about already over the last decade. And I have a research assistant named Charles Savoy that has written just tons of work, very well documented, on the suppression of silver to a level beyond even Ted Butler. I mean, this goes back into the London banking system and how much they really despise silver. See, and I'm jumping around, John. I'm sorry. I know you know me a little bit. My mind has ventures off on its own. But a gold-only standard never really works. I discussed that in this month's Morgan Report. So anyone that wants, to get to the member site for free, you'll be able to read it. And I'm not anti-gold. I'm a gold bug. I'm a silver bug. But once, the old adage, he who owns the gold makes the rules. And if it's a gold-only standard and the banks own the gold, eventually they make the rules and they, turn off the gold spigots, so to speak, meaning that they have control, and then it's, paper gold, and then the paper gold isn't paper gold anymore, and away you go on a fiat system. Whereas if you have bimetallism, where silver and gold check each other, and it's not regulated as an edict that 15 pieces of this equal 1 piece of that, but the free market determines how much silver equals how much gold, and that system is allowed, you have a very stable monetary system under those conditions.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for your more than generous offer on offering my subscribers a month free to your research and tools. I'm sure everyone should take that up. So just again, www.silver-investor.com/AU for Australia. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate your coming on here, and maybe sometime in the future we can have you back.
Okay. Well, my pleasure. If you wanted to take it on yourself, John, if you wanted to pass on anything from your large subscriber base that you thought would benefit them or your group, that's fine with me. I'll do my best to answer for you.
Okay, well, there goes my weekend in collating all that. Thanks, David.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.